Okay, so right now we want to look at how to configure RSTP in Huawei switches. In this particular lab 3.2, we are going to learn how to enable and disable the RSTP mode, how to configure an edge port. You already know that when you're connecting to end devices or when you're connecting to routers, you want to configure those ports as edge ports so that they cannot go into the discarding state and so that they can transit from discarding to forwarding immediately. We are also going to learn about bpdu protection to avoid ports that have been configured as edge ports from receiving bogus bpdus that can cause the RSTP to start recalculating. Then we are also going to do RSTP loop protection so that in case a root port has some congestion and we have delays, it will not be able to affect, it will not be able to flap and therefore cause loops within our network. Okay, so the topology for RSTP is pretty similar to the previous one. The only thing I've added on mine, so I've already set up the topology. So the only thing I've added on mine is an end device so that we can configure this port on S1 G/0/1 as an edge port. So you please remember to do that when you'll be implementing this lab on your ENSP. Okay. Excuse me. So we're going to start from step 3. Step 1 and step 2 is just preparing your device if you're using the topology for the previous lab. But for me, I've dragged in new switches, so I just begin from step 3. At step 3, we're supposed to enable the STP mode as RSTP. Again, just as a reminder, the default STP mode, if we do display STP, you will see that the STP mode, the default is MSTP. So if we want to use RSTP, again we have to configure using the command that we've just seen there. So how to do that? STP mode RSTP. I can do tab to complete. Then I can also do that on S2 STP mode RSTP. That. So after enabling the STP mode, we can do display STP to see the results that the mode now has changed. So display STP. And now we should be able to see that the STP mode is RSTP on S1. So let's move on. We now want to configure port gigabit Ethernet 0/0/1. These ones that have connected to an end device. This particular interface, we want to configure it as an edge port. It is important to reiterate that the reason as to why we configure an edge port is so that it can be able to transition to forwarding state without participating in the RSTP calculation. By default, all ports in a Huawei S5700 switch are non-edge ports. So you have to configure them manually as an edge port. We have a command that you can use on system view, but otherwise you can also configure them per interface using the command STP edge port enable. So for me, I'm not going to enable it also on S2 because I've only connected an end device to S1. So I'm gonna go into that interface and configure it as an edge port. So I go into int G 0/0/1. Then I do STP edge port enable, like that. So when I do enter, now that will become an edge port. So I can do quit to go back to system view. And if I do display STP brief, I should be able to see that gigabit Ethernet 0/0/1 is on a forwarding state. As you've already seen, with RSTP, we don't have the listening and the listening state. So we have discarding, learning, and forwarding. So we only have 3 states in RSTP, which is important to remember. So if you configure an interface as an edge port, it will always be on forwarding state. Okay, so after confirming that, the next thing you're supposed to do on step 5 is to configure bpdu protection. bpdu protection. So let's read this paragraph so that we can understand why. So edge ports are directly connected to user terminal and will not receive bpdus. However, attackers may send pseudo bpdus to attack the switching device. If the edge ports receive the bpdus, the switching device configures the edge port as a non-edge port and triggers a new spanning tree calculation. So this will cause network flapping, meaning you'll have some downtime in your network. So bpdu protection can be used to protect switching devices against malicious attacks. How do you configure bpdu protection? You configure it on system view by using the command stp bpdu protection. So let me just do that. Note that right now, under this column protection, gigabit Ethernet 0/0/1 has none, similar to the other 2 which are connecting to switch 2. So I'll simply do stp bpdu protection. So I'm just doing tab. You see how it cycles through. So if I do that and I do enter, now if I do display stp brief, you should be able to see that now we have configured a bpdu protection on gigabit Ethernet 0/0/1. So what happens once you've done this? If a user sends a bogus bpdu to this particular interface, the switch will do 2 things. Number 1, it's going to shut it down. It's going to shut down this interface, therefore disconnecting that particular person, and it's also going to send an alert to the network management system. The NMS is simply the machine that you're using to monitor the network. So it's also going to alert you as a network administrator that someone was trying to send a bpdu to a port that has been configured as an edge port. Okay, so after that, we can now go ahead and configure loop protection. So a loop can occur if we have delays in the network. Let me just read this paragraph. So on a network running RSTP, a switching device maintains the root port status and status of the alternate ports by receiving bpdus from an upstream switching device. So if the switching device cannot receive bpdus from the upstream device because of link congestion or unidirectional link failure, the switching device reselects a root port. So if you don't receive a bpdu for a certain amount of time, the maximum age expires, then okay, you have to elect another root port. So the original root port becomes a designated port, and the original discarding ports change to the forwarding state. And remember, it's only a congestion maybe that has occurred. So the switching may cause network loops, which can be mitigated by configuring loop protection. So how do we configure loop protection? You have to go into each of the interface that is connecting to a switch and use the command stp loop protection. So let's do that. So let's do that here on S1. So int g0/0/9, then we do stp loop protection. Enter, and then we again do int gigabit Ethernet 0/0/10, and we also do stp loop protection. So if we do that, now if we do display stp brief, we are going to see that we have configured loop protection on 009 and port 10, which have connected to switch 2. So this particular lab is actually quite short, so that's the end of it. We've learned how to configure the mods as RSTP, how to configure an edge port, how to configure loop protection, and also how to configure bpdu protection. So asanteni sana. If anyone has a question, please go ahead and ask. Anyone with a question?
Chakaris,
Yes.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
We didn't have the loop protection.
We didn't have the, sorry, I can't hear you very well.
I'm saying the loop protection. It's not there for the STP.
For STP?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. No. STP, this is a feature that was introduced with RSTP. So in STP, you cannot configure loop protection.
Okay, fine.
Okay, sawa. Okay, asanteni.